Welcome to the FanDuel wide receiver analysis for Week 6. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Italy 42. Taking a look, I almost forgot your name right there. I was just like,
it's underneath my name right there.
I know you're on the screen. I blacked out for a minute. I'm already getting ahead of myself because we took a few weeks off of kind of disagreeing on some guys, but we're back this week.
It's cool. I was wishing I was talking to someone else too, so we're even.
Yeah, I see you once a week, and I just always.
It's just the worst couple hours of your week.
I don't look forward to it at all. Yeah,
it's understandable.
But we'll jump into some cash game guys here. One, I mean, you can never disagree on this guy, Antonio Brown, 9,700. Definitely an easier fit here, not in terms of pricing, but just in terms of kind of surrounding prices on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously $9,700 is his highest price of the season. Just wait till you see his DraftKings price if you haven't. It's up there as well. I mean, and that's not to say he's a must play in cash games by any means at that price, but if you just want the safety, you want an incredible matchup. I mean, Miami's been just absolutely horrible against the pass. They haven't been much better against the run either, but Brown's probably going to see Byron Maxwell and ex-wide receiver Tony Lippett in coverage this week. It's speculated there's going to be plenty of wins, but really, we kind of have seen that issue before with this team. We saw Ben Roethlisberger and Andy Dalton in that game deal with some wind and some bad conditions, and then Roethlisberger still ended up with 3 touchdowns. So I kind of hope that keeps some people off of him, and I think he's got a tremendous floor and upside. We saw last week Sammy Coates absolutely exploded. Le'Veon Bell had a pretty nice game, and just quietly, Antonio Brown still went in there, 78 yards and a touchdown, just kind of does what he does. I mean, that's his floor each week. Even when he had 4 catches, I think, 2 weeks ago, still ended up with about 20 fantasy points. So, this is a guy that he's as safe as they come. You certainly have to pay for it, but there is enough value to go around that if you want to fit him in, you certainly can.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Antonio Brown, he's the best wide receiver in the league. There's no doubt about it. And as you point out, a matchup against ex-wide receivers, give me a break.
Yeah. So. It's not close. Like, he's the best player in the best matchup this week. And I will not be scared off of Antonio Brown in bad weather. Won't happen.
Yeah. Jordy Nelson, this is the one where we differ a little bit. 8,300. I'll let you you can take the reins first here.
I mean, last week with Jordy Nelson, I know we were both on him. I know a lot of people were on him. He was a guy that, it was in a very good spot for him. Yardage-wise, he was kind of a disappointment, but found the end zone like he does. 38 yards on 4 catches, but 13 targets last week. I didn't see much of that game, so I don't know if that was, erratic throws, if it was whatever that may be. I don't know if there were any drops in there, so I can't really speculate on that. But, this is a guy who is quite possibly the best red zone receiver in all of football, if you ask me. I mean, you're looking at his numbers here. He's seen 6 targets inside the 10 already this year, which is the most in the NFL. Caught 5 of them, 4 of those for touchdowns, and 10 targets total inside the red zone. That's what I'm looking for as a cash game play with Jordy Nelson. That's not to say he's going to go for 100+ yards in this matchup. He certainly could, but for me, I'm playing Nelson in cash games, thinking 6 for 50 and a touchdown is good for me. He's the guy that's not going to kill you. I mean, we saw even on his bad games last week, still ends up with double-digit points. So maybe not the monster upside that he has at times this week, but I still think he's a safe option, and I'd be willing to bet with you he scores a touchdown.
Okay, sure. Touchdown, yeah. I mean, you look at, obviously, the volume is clearly not an issue with him at this point. I think separation's been a little bit of trouble. I mean, obviously, he had a great week against Darius Sleigh. That was kind of in my face because I'm a big fan of Sleigh as a corner. Going to draw Morris Claiborne this week. I think that's a tougher matchup than people realize. I kind of just like other guys inside the, inside that price range. I think Allen Robinson for a couple hundred more is where I'm kind of leaning. But not to say Jordy Nelson's a bad play. I think more for me, he's just GPP and kind of a swerve off of some of those guys.
So what's the over under here then on FanDuel points?
You want to set it about 15?
Let's go 14-5.
Okay.
14-5. All right. Settled.
But if Allen Robinson just absolutely blows up, I mean, it
he might. Matter. He might. More on him later because I did write him up in the other article.
Yeah. GPP's T.Y. Hilton. This guy's been absolutely dominant in terms of volume. And obviously, look at this matchup. I think it's perceived as still a tough matchup. I don't quite agree with it though.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, he was a guy we talked about last week, and obviously he paid off in a huge way. Highest scorer of the week, as far as I'm not sure if he outscored David Johnson, but among receivers, he was the highest scorer of the week. And monster game. That's his second game with over 170 yards. He's questionable. He's been limited in practice. You know how these things go with guys like T.Y. Hilton. It's more of a precautionary thing. There's really no indication that he's going to sit this one out. Seems like he's much more likely to play than not. And obviously Dante Moncrief's still out. This game, it's only the 6th week of the season, but this is a huge game for both these teams because, in this division, there's really no clear-cut favorite. It's kind of a battle between really these two teams, if you ask me, for who's gonna reign supreme. And one of these teams is gonna make the playoffs, and it's likely that it comes down to a 9-7 kind of situation for both teams at the end of the year, and whoever owns the tiebreaker is going to be the one making the playoffs. And there's not a chance that I have more faith in the Texans, especially without J.J. Watt, than the Colts. So bad defense really on both sides, if you ask me. So T.Y. Hilton, I mean, he's proven for his size somehow. He's a red zone threat. He's a deep ball threat. He's fast. He's got great hands. I mean, the guy does it all. So I definitely don't see any merit to an all-out fade, even if he's still questionable. I think he's got a really nice floor and ceiling.
Yeah, I do too. And I think you're staying in this game here with Will Fuller.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, I think we looked here and it was like, okay, this one could turn into a shootout. Maybe if Watt was still there, you'd look and go, okay, at home for Houston, you take a little bit of off the Indy offense, but this one could kind of really go back and forth. And as much as Brock Osweiler sucks, that Colts defense is even worse.
Yeah, and I mean, this has been a situation where coming into the year, we all talked about how DeAndre Hopkins had found a way to be productive with every quarterback, Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer, but who couldn't be good with him, of course. But, then we come in now and Brock Osweiler. I mean, it's not to say that Hopkins has been terrible, but he's an upper tier receiver this year. And I mean, he's got similar numbers to Will Fuller this season. Fuller's got 2 less targets, 1 less touchdown, same amount if you count that return touchdown. But Fuller has 44 more yards and 3 more catch to 20-plus yards already than Hopkins does. And, Will Fuller's just been the more consistent option, and he seems like he's got a little bit better of a rapport with Osweiler, which isn't saying much because, like you said, Osweiler has really struggled, and this offense has struggled in a big way. But once again, we look at the Vegas total, almost 26 points for a team, much like the Bills we talked about in the other podcast. An offense has been struggling. Vegas all of a sudden thinks they're going to score, upwards of 4 touchdowns. And I'm going to go with the best option. And in my mind, that's Fuller here.
And for the price, I mean, I don't think you can argue with how they compare. He's the cheaper of the two. You usually last year it was wide receiver 2s against Indy. I mean, you just plugged them in every day of the week and it panned out. So I like that price. I like Fuller quite a bit. Obviously some return upside as well. Looking at value, Cameron Meredith, 5,400, coming off a big week. Obviously, you look at Eddie Royal, Alshon Jeffrey, Miller, who are all there, but Hoyer's just kind of spreading that ball around to those secondary options.
Yeah, I mean, Hoyer's a very generous person. He seems like a real great guy. He's been getting everyone involved, and I mean, you can't argue with it. I've got backlash for years about liking Brian Hoyer, but anyone who wants to question Brian Hoyer right now is just a fool. I mean, 317 and 2 touchdowns, 302 and 2 touchdowns, 397 and 2 touchdowns. Granted, Detroit, Indy, not exactly tough matchups for him. Dallas, not an easy matchup necessarily there either, but now based in Jacksonville, who does have pretty good numbers against the pass, but I mean, this is one of the higher volume passing attacks in the NFL. I mean, Chicago running 66.3% of their plays as passing plays this season, 5th highest in the NFL. So, this is definitely a team that is a pass-first offense. And like you said, there are plenty of weapons to go around, but Alshon Jeffrey just still doesn't look like himself. He saw half as many targets as Cameron Meredith last week, 6 versus 12. That's not to say that that'll happen again, but when there's 40-plus passes to go around, it's a pretty safe bet that you can go ahead and lock in Cam Meredith for 8-plus targets here.
And we're really looking at a defense that I think is, in terms of what you see in the pass rank, it looks pretty good. But when they match up against individual wide receivers, it's not. Yeah. So I do like these guys. I like the Bears offense quite a bit. Tavon Austin, this might be the only time we see him in this article all year.
I hope so.
I do too.
I mean, I'm not a big Tavon Austin fan. I mean, he's the kind of guy you want on your track team, and he's the guy you want,
Yes, DFS track, make it happen.
Yeah, he's the guy that you want if you and your crew broke into some house and need to run. Like, he's fast. Like, he's the kind of guy that I just don't have much faith in him as a wide receiver. I mean, he's a great playmaker. He's quick. He runs good routes, but I mean, he's small. There's a lot of good and I think more bad to say about him. But, one good thing is he's got 9 targets a game this year. He's had 9 carries, which is only a little less than 2 per game there. But this is a Lions defense that, as we all know, has been one of the worst in all of football. So Tavon Austin is really the only chance that this team has to win this game, if you ask me. Because everyone wants to say Todd Gurley, but it really hasn't been Todd Gurley for much of this season. We've seen a few pretty good games from him, but for the most part, he's been shut down. So teams are forcing Case Keenum to throw the ball, and that's going to be a good kind of a winning scenario for them this week against the Lions defense that, outside of whoever Darius Slay's covering, it's pretty much free reign for everyone. So you got to imagine that they're going to find a way to get the ball in his hands and just hope that he can take one to the house, because I think he's just going to be the focal point in the passing attack again, and kind of by default. I mean, Brian Quick, is he going to be your focal point? He's not. I mean, Austin's going to get 10 targets easily in this one.
Yeah, I think Sleigh is on Quick this week. I think Kenny Britton, Tavon Austin were the 2 that were kind of lucked out. Sammy Coates, you kind of highlight here, obviously coming off a monster week where he could have had 3 touchdowns, but 2 will do. 6,400, obviously priced up a little bit more expensive than these 2 guys. That's just more of kind of an extra salary play.
Yeah, and I mean, I was a little worried about his injury status, but I saw earlier today that said he's practicing even though he has stitches in his hand, so he should be good to go. I think people are a little worried about him because Eli Rogers is coming back, but I don't know if you guys have watched Eli Rogers play this year, but he does not look good. I mean, that touchdown he scored bounced off someone else's hands straight into his hands, so it's not like the guy made a great play. Let's not overreact about Eli Rogers here.
That was a great play.
I don't want to talk about that. I was so angry about the play. It was the flukiest thing of the season.
Yeah, a bunch of hog mollies out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, right.
That's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel wide receiver analysis for week 6. Be sure to head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com, check out our great tools and content.